So what's going on, guys? This is Corey back again, and I wanted to talk to you today about the Cleveland Browns and the acquisition of Odell Beckham Jr. and does adding Odell Beckham Jr. make them the team to beat? First of all, you got to look at it from a completely unbiased perspective because obviously adding a star like Odell Beckham Jr. makes them a better team. They had a 7-8-1 record last year. They were 14th against the pass, 13th. Well, no, they were 14th in passing, 13th in receiving. They were 21st in first downs. They were 14th in running, and they were 20th in points scored. Right? As far as defense is concerned, they were 30th in total defense, 28th against the run, but they were second with 30 takeaways as it relates to takeaways. So they weren't a superiorly great team before getting him. They were a team on the rise. And what happens is when you go from not winning any games to winning games, and then you add in the semantics and drama of Baker Mayfield and the issues that he had with the coaching staff and things of that nature and the HBO series, obviously it brings awareness to the Cleveland Browns. But when you take a look at it, you have to look at it from top to bottom. So let's start off with all the changes. First of all, they changed their head coach. So they got Freddie Kitchens, who's the former Cowboys tight end coach, and he's also former running back and quarterbacks coach. But then you also add in a new offensive coordinator in Todd Monken, who is the former Jaguars receiving coach, and then the Buccaneers receiving coach and offensive coordinator from last year, who has been labeled as an air raid coach or under the air raid discipline. So obviously that means he likes to throw the ball a lot. And then you add in their defensive coach, which is Steve Wilkins, who used to be the former Arizona Cardinals head coach, in which after one season, because he only won 3 games, he was fired. But he was also the Bears DB coach, the Chargers DB coach, the Panthers DB coach, and also assistant head coach from last year, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see here. So now if we actually start taking a look at statistics of actual players, let's just look at their offense, for example. Baker Mayfield was responsible for 27 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, and 3,755 yards of total offense. Right? But in the running game, Nick Chubb and Duke Johnson, Nick Chubb had 192 attempts with 996 total yards and 8 touchdowns. The attempts are probably going to go down, obviously adding Odell Beckham Jr. And then Duke Johnson had 40 attempts for 201 yards, but no touchdowns as a running back. And then the top 2 receivers from last year were obviously Jarvis Landry and Njoku. And Jarvis Landry had 81 receptions for 976 yards and 4 touchdowns. And Njoku had 56 receptions for 634 yards and 4 touchdowns. But then adding in Odell Beckham Jr., you add in 77 receptions for 1,052 yards and 6 touchdowns. So the Cleveland Browns as an offense weren't necessarily this extra dynamic team, right? But they were solid. They weren't great, but they were okay. And they were able to outduel a lot of teams. And also, getting those 30 turnovers helped them in spite of having a really bad total offense and having a piss-poor running defense. You're 28th against the run. And if you look at the release of their schedule this year, because I had to write it all down, they have... For their home games, they're going to be playing the Buffalo Bills, the Miami Dolphins, the Rams, the Seahawks, the Tennessee Titans, the Baltimore Ravens, the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Steelers. And their away games are going to be against the Patriots, the Jets, the Arizona Cardinals, the Denver Broncos, the 49ers, the Baltimore Ravens, the Cincinnati Bengals, and then the Steelers again. With this schedule, they're only going to be playing 4 teams that ranked in the top 4 in defense last year, and 4 teams that were ranked in the top 4 in offense last year. They only faced 2 teams that were ranked in the top 4 in offense and defense last year, in the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? If you go through the majority of their schedule, for example, like they play the Bills. The Bills were 30th in offense and second in defense, but the Dolphins were 31st in offense, 29th in defense. The Rams were second in defense, but 19th in offense. The Seattle Seahawks were 18th in offense and 16th in defense. The Tennessee Titans were 25th in offense and 8th in defense. The Baltimore Ravens were 9th in offense and 1st in defense. But then you go to the Cincinnati Bengals, who were 26th in offense and 32nd in defense. And then the Steelers, who we don't know what they're going to be like this year, in spite of them saying, you know, Juju Smith-Schuster's a guy. We got James Conner. I almost said Conor McGregor. Jesus. They got James Conner. And that's about the summation of it, right? They don't really have an air raiding passing attack that's going to make anybody say, you know what? We can't crowd the box. So Juju Smith-Schuster's, you know, obviously what they're going to probably do is they're going to double Juju Smith-Schuster, put everybody in the box, single the other guy on the other side, and say, beat us. I mean, obviously you have the tight ends, but the tight end 9 times out of 10 is probably going to have to be in for run support, and they're not going to send him out too much because nobody's really going to respect the pass. So they're going to be sending a lot of pressure in this upcoming season. So, I mean, they were ranked 4th in offense and 6th in defense last year, but this year we don't really know what they're going to be. Then their away games, I'm not going to say first because I don't really know exactly how it's scheduled, but I just saw it. They play the Patriots, who were 5th in offense and 31st in defense. But they got a defense that's really a bend but don't break defense. And they always show up later on in the season. The first half of the season, they're not clicking on all cylinders as they should be. I mean, you have the Jets, who can only go up from where they were at because they were 29th in offense and 25th in defense. So they can definitely do better. And then the Arizona Cardinals, who were 31st in offense and 20th in defense. And then you got the Denver Broncos, who didn't have a quarterback. So now they got a quarterback, but they were 19th in offense and 22nd in defense. And then you got the 49ers, who were 16th in offense and 13th in defense. But they're adding Tevin Coleman from the Falcons as a running game, in addition to getting their other running back. Then you also add in the fact that they add in Quan Alexander to the defense as a linebacker, plus they're getting Jimmy Garoppolo back. So they're going to be a decent team that could create problems. It'll be a sight to see exactly how their defense is going to perform, but they could be a problem. I don't know how much of a problem, especially when you look at their secondary. I don't know how they're really going to deal with the Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham, and Njoku situation. But it really just depends on how they're going to do. But then you go back to the Baltimore Ravens, who you got to play again. And like I said, they were 9th in offense and 1st in defense. And people are really questioning whether or not they're going to be that good. Factually speaking, they had another linebacker behind C.J. Mosley. That's very talented. The only thing they really need to do is get a pass rusher and probably somebody else in the secondary, and then probably add a receiver or two, and probably go ahead and I didn't keep up too much with whether or not they went about solidifying the offensive line, but I think they did. So they're probably still going to be a very solid team. And then you're going to have Lamar Jackson actually having an entire offense with the first team, with actually the starters. Remember, he didn't start the whole team, so he was playing with the backups. So now he has a full offseason to work on a full playbook and work with the number ones, which will be another thing that will help him in his process of being a better quarterback. And then, you turn it right back around and they got to play the Cincinnati Bengals, who I said can only go up from where they were at because they played god awful, which is why I've always wanted A.J. Green to go someplace else, but his loyalty is unmatched. So, hey, more power to you, bruh. And then you got the Steelers once again. So at worst, they should have like a 9-7 schedule, but at best, they should be like 11-5 or better because they don't really play anybody that out of maybe 4 teams, and really it's not 4 teams because they play Baltimore and the Steelers twice. The only other teams that I can see giving them a problem is Seattle, and that's if they solidify their running game and then get some wide receivers and fix that defense. And then they got the Patriots. We don't know how the Jets are going to do. And then they got Denver. That's about it. They really don't have, and then obviously they play the Rams, but they only played them one time. So they don't really have a schedule that's gonna create massive problems for them. But everybody with the whole Super Bowl, oh, they're the team to beat. They're probably playing a pump your brakes. Pump your brakes. Because that defense, especially with that run defense that they had last year being 28th, when you got to go up against who? Todd Gurley, you got to go up against the Seattle Seahawks, who I think were close to being first in running last year, in the run game last year. You have Tennessee, who has also a pretty decent run game with Baltimore and them adding Mark Ingram. Then you have the Steelers with James Conner. Then you have the Patriots. Then you have, obviously, the Jets. And then you turn right back around, and then you have Arizona, who hopefully they can do a lot better. And then you have the 49ers. Then you got Baltimore and the Steelers again. So they play a lot of teams that have good running backs. So it'll be interesting. It'll be very interesting because their defensive coordinator is a secondary guy. He's not even really a in the trenches linebacker type guy. He's a secondaries guy. He coached the DBs every place that he went. He was the DB coach for the Chargers, the DB coach for the Panthers, the DB coach for the Bears. So, I mean, that's what he does. And then you have like it really just depends. It depends on how they start performing. I know it sounds really good on paper, but you have to put it all together. And then that also depends on offseason acquisitions and how these teams are going to come out and play. I feel like a lot of defenses got better. But I don't really see from a defensive standpoint, based on any acquisitions, that they got drastically better. Let alone the fact that if you're a Cleveland fan, you can't count on them making, 30 turnovers again, 30 takeaways again. Like, you just can't do it. That's what the Falcons had. The Falcons went all the way to the Super Bowl with all them takeaways. They ain't getting none. They were piss poor the next year and the year after that. Like, it doesn't happen. Those are anomalies. And those are what kept them in a lot of games with the amount of takeaways they had. So if you don't count on them having that many takeaways, you add in Odell Beckham, which is obviously going to take carries away from the running game. And in addition to that, it's obviously going to take touches away from the other two receivers in Jarvis Landry, which is one of the things that Deion Sanders was talking about when he said it's going to be very interesting to see how you're going to be able to spread out the ball to all these guys. You know what I'm saying? So let alone the fact that you have three interesting personalities. I don't see Jarvis Landry and Odell having an issue, but Baker Mayfield and Odell could probably have an issue. But like I said, it'll be interesting to see what they're able to do. But everybody with the Super Bowl talks, pump your brakes. They're going to be good. I don't know how historically great or they're going to be like Odell says they're going to be, because I still feel like on the defensive side of the ball, they're lackluster outside of individualized or individual talent, like a Denzel Ward and a Myles Garrett, and possibly, a Christian Kirksey. But reality of the situation is they don't have a defense that scares anybody. They just had this anomaly with this amount of takeaways. But they were literally 2 spots away from being dead last in total defense, and they were 28th against the run. So anybody who sits up here and looks at the schedule and then says, oh, well, they gave this team problems and this team problems, factually speaking, most of the teams who they gave problems were riddled with injuries last year. Like the Falcons were decimated in injuries last year. They played the Carolina Panthers and barely beat the Panthers, and Cam Newton was hurt. His shoulder was shot. So it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult for the defense. Offensively, they should be okay. I'm just interested to see how they're going to spread the ball out to all of these guys. But they should be able to make it work. But everybody's saying Super Bowl this, hey, pump your brakes, relax a little bit. You don't know what these other teams are going to do, but clearly the Patriots are going to be where they need to be. The Steelers are a question mark. Seattle is always an interesting team to go against. They could win any game or they could lose it. But as long as they have Bobby Wagner and certain guys on that team, with Russell Wilson being able to, if he can continue to bring out the magic that he's always brought, yeah. And if the Rams perform anywhere near where they performed last year, they're going to be a problem. The Jets are only going to go up. Arizona, depending on what they do during the draft, could probably be a problem too. Because remember, they add Terrell Suggs, they still have Patrick Peterson. They're probably going to get Kyler Murray. They have a new offensive system. They got Christian Kirk. They I don't know about too many other acquisitions on the defensive side of the ball, but I'm pretty sure that outside of a quarterback, most of their talent is going to probably go to the defensive side of the ball. Probably with the exclusion of maybe signing an extra wide receiver. Denver could be a serious problem. Could be a problem now they actually have a quarterback because they've always had a good defense. But when you don't have a good offense, it puts the defense out a lot. So say, for instance, you don't have a good passing game and you can't convert third downs, your defense is going to be out there a lot, which explains this being 22nd in defense situation. And even without having a quarterback, they were 19th. So they were 19th in offense. So you add a quarterback, and if you can keep Emmanuel Sanders and the other guys, Emmanuel Sanders, healthy, in addition to the fact that they're obviously going to sign offseason acquisitions because Demaryius Thomas is now going to go play for the Patriots. So they're only going to go up. I mean, the 49ers are clearly, they should be better with getting their starting quarterback back. And like I said, adding Quan Alexander and adding an extra running back and then getting their other running back healthy in McKinnon. So they should, worst case scenario, they should be 9-7. Best case scenario, they should be 11-5. But Super Bowl, that's an interesting dynamic because you got to see what these other teams do. You know, not only against the teams they play, but against the teams they don't. So, I mean, they could definitely be a very good team. All right, but like I said, it'll be interesting to see. Thanks once again for listening to me. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm going to try to do more videos. Definitely going to try to get a better camera because I'm using my phone. And I'm also going to do a lot better with editing. But right now, I'm just trying to get as much info and get my face out there as much as possible so you guys can see me. So, like, comment, subscribe. Appreciate you. Thank you for your time. Y'all have a good one. Peace.